Okay, where are all my minimal jewelry girls? Because that is exactly what I am. I am a dainty chain and everyday hoop girl all the way. And that is why I'm obsessed with Uncommon James. It was founded by the Queen, Kristen Cavallari, in 2017. They started out with a simple mission to create affordable jewelry that elevates personal style. And over time, they've launched Vermeil and sterling silver collections, bold pendant statement pieces, and obviously still having the dainty chains and everyday hoops. But it's for those who want luxurious investment pieces that are still on the affordable side. And I am obsessed with all of my pieces from there because I've had them for a while and they have not tarnished at all. They're so quality. And since then, she's created Uncommon Lifestyle and Uncommon Beauty. Uncommon Lifestyle is home to candles, kitchenware, apparel, and so much more. And then they launched Uncommon Beauty, which is a skincare line. They created a 5-step routine, and now they're expanding into more specialized products to take that skincare to the next level. So if you're interested in trying out any of the products on Uncommon James, lucky for you, I have a code that you can use at checkout. If you head to uncommonjames.com, you can use code Veronica at checkout. That's code VERONICA, Veronica at checkout. Head to uncommonjames.com and use code Veronica at checkout. Hello, and welcome back to Martinis and Bikinis. I am your hostess, Veronica Droulia. Saddle up because today we have an amazing episode. I know I say that every week, but this one in particular is so educational. It taught me so much about myself, my relationships, and my attachment style. If you don't know what attachment theory is, it is a psychological explanation for the emotional bonds and relationships between people. This episode is a great opportunity for you to learn more about your attachment style. And there's 4 different types, which our guest, Dr. Morgan, explains in the episode. Dr. Morgan is a relationship coach, attachment theory expert, and creator of the ESL relationship method. Her mission is to help women get off the dating roller coaster, raise their self-worth, and attract the healthy relationship they've always wanted. I legit forgot we were recording and basically had a therapy session with Dr. Morgan, so brace yourselves. She truly created such a comforting environment. We talked about grief when it comes to your attachment style, did a deep dive of each style, and talked about our own shared experiences with our attachment styles and how to heal. So, without further ado, my little teenies, please welcome Dr. Morgan to Martinis and Bikinis.
Hello, and welcome to Martinis and Bikinis, the podcast for everything under the sun. I am your hostess, Veronica Droulia, and I am here to help you navigate your 20s through all things lifestyle, beauty, and fashion. So, if you're ready, let's dive into today's episode.
Dr. Morgan, welcome to Martinis and Bikinis.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I have been talking about attachment theory like crazy with friends. And I was telling you this before the recording, but I feel like it's so important for people to understand so that way they can navigate their relationships and even not romantically, but friendships, family life. I feel like it definitely gives you a good idea of how you function in relationships in general. So I think it's going to be a really good conversation. But usually how I like to start these episodes out is asking the guest what their roots are. So you can give some background into, where you're from, or maybe just some things that people might not know about you, or what got you to what you're doing today, what led you here. But feel free to just give us all the tea.
I love it. Well, I'm so excited to be here and talk about attachment theory. I know that it is the missing piece to the dating puzzle. I always tell people. So we're going to have such a juicy conversation about that. A little bit about me. So I'm a clinical psychologist and attachment theory expert and podcast host. The podcast is called Let's Get Vulnerable. And
I love that name.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's an iconic name because I feel like a lot of people are scared to get vulnerable. So having that as your name in the forefront is a perfect way to have guests on and open up.
Yeah. That song, Let's Get Physical.
Yeah.
For some reason, I would hear that song, but I would have, I would switch it out for Let's Get Vulnerable. I don't know. When I was coming up.
Vulnerable.
When I was coming up with my podcast, that's where my brain went. So that's what it is. And we have to get vulnerable in order to heal. So it's a powerful message.
For sure.
But I live in Bozeman, Montana. And I have an incredible partner. We're going on 3 years in May. And if you would have told me that like 10 years ago, I would have never thought that was possible because of my past relationship patterns. So really what led me to this work was my own childhood trauma, going through the loss of my mom at a young age and how that really impacted my family, and just seeing my dad struggle in relationships, and then all of the unhealthy beliefs about relationships that I internalized through childhood trauma then led me to really toxic dating patterns in my 20s. And I always talk about this concept called repetition compulsion. We can talk about it more. But in a nutshell, it's like you're dating the same guy over and over again. They just have a different haircut. It's like it's the same relationship dynamic over and over and over, right?
Yeah.
And I did that for a really long time. And then I found
Which
myself,
I think is really common. I feel like a lot of people find themselves in that position.
Yeah. And I definitely want to talk with you about how do we break that pattern, because
how do we break
we
the
need to
cycle?
break it.
For sure.
And for me, breaking that pattern came in the form of hitting rock bottom. I was dating a narcissist, obviously unbeknownst to me at the time, but I was in my second year of graduate school studying to be a clinical psychologist, and I found myself in this relationship. And over the course of about 18 months, I found myself at rock bottom, low self-worth, completely isolated. And I had this choice. I could either keep going in this horrible toxic relationship or decide to heal. And I decided to heal, thank goodness. And I now have helped hundreds of women do the same. And I just kind of pinch myself thinking about where I am today. Myself having healthy, secure relationships and just getting to help other people do the same thing, no matter their past, no matter what they've been through.
For sure. I feel like there's so many things that you said that I just want to comment on. First of all, the hat. I'm just now being able to like read it.
So this is my design. Like
No way.
I'm contemplating making this into merch. So you calling out, I'm like, okay, this needs to be like,
I will buy it. I will buy it.
Okay.
Boundaries are hot. That's what it says. Your hat says boundaries are hot for those that are tuning in via audio. But I feel like it's so rewarding and so empowering whenever you realize that you are this like unshakable person that is able to create these boundaries. And I feel like, yeah, really understanding that boundaries are hot is a big symbol of healing for sure. But as somebody that also lost a parent, I was a little bit older. I was 17. I lost my dad. I definitely think that reshapes your relationships and the way that you just view the world in general, I think. And I feel like healing is so important after losing a parent because it's 50% of you, you know, it's your DNA. It's a big part of who you are. And I think there's a lot of people that don't necessarily go through the healing process when they are grieving or they've lost a loved one, and that will start to materialize into other relationships later on. So I love that you were vulnerable and shared that, because I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to when losing a parent and, you know, dealing with relationships later on. But whenever you mentioned that you dated a narcissist, what were the signs that you started to notice whenever you realized that you were in this like unhealthy relationship and maybe this person wasn't serving you?
I remember the very first moment that I started to realize that it was unhealthy. It was about 6 months into the relationship. He commented that he thought my hair looked terrible in a ponytail and that he wanted me to wear it down. And that's when the first alarm bell went off of, oh, this person is making this derogatory comment towards me and they're wanting to control what I do.
Yeah.
And then from there, the control, the devaluing, the emotional manipulation, like all of it just got worse and worse. And I really think some of the signs are just that desire to control is really common with a narcissist, and gaslighting. So making you feel like you must be crazy, you feel very invalidated. And then the isolation. So very slowly, he started to try to get in my head about everyone that was in my life, even my best friend at the time. He really wanted to isolate me from her. So he would make up these things about her, or say things about her. And it was just lots of signs that because I was in an insecurely attached place, and because I had all these negative beliefs about love and scarcity mindset that no one would ever love me, there was a lot of things that I looked the other way on. And obviously some of it's experience, and now I would recognize those things instantly. But narcissists are also very good at what they do. They're very good at knowing exactly what to say to manipulate you or to get you to want to be with them. So we all need empathy. I always say, like, you would never go into the relationship if you knew that that's who the person was. And a lot of times you don't find out until you're 6 months in, like just like me.
Yeah. And some people it never clicks, and they find themselves in this just very tragic, unhealthy relationship. And, they might feel a lot of regret when they realize maybe this isn't meant for me, or it doesn't work out, because you've wasted a lot of time with somebody that wasn't seeing your value or your worth. And I think it's great what the work you're doing, that you're able to kind of help people realize their power and realize that they don't deserve to be treated in, a narcissistic way, or have people in their life that aren't able to really like boost them up and give them that partnership that they deserve. So I think it's awesome. But do you feel like, going back to the cycle, do you feel like whenever you were dating afterwards that they were also narcissistic people that you were dating, or was that just this one person? Or what was like the trend that you were seeing with that cycle that you eventually broke?
Yeah, I think my pattern was dating emotionally unavailable people.
Okay.
But it was just all on a different spectrum. So some people were really emotionally unavailable or toxic, such as the narcissist. But I would always choose people who couldn't actually show up for me, who couldn't actually get to know me, where I really wouldn't be fully seen or fully chosen. So where the commitment really wasn't there. And I what's so funny about this, maybe you can relate, is I actually was really good at helping other people become securely attached.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can definitely relate.
It was that cliche of, I have all these amazing clients. My clients started getting married and they're in these healthy, amazing relationships. And I remember being about 30 and being like, whoa, this is where the stuff I'm doing is really working for my clients. I need to apply this to myself.
Right.
So I finally did the work on myself and got to this place where I was attracted to emotionally available people.
I love that for you. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
So I would love to know what your attachment style is, and can it change?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, we could be here for hours. I'm like, how do we sum this up? So your attachment style is going to determine a lot of things. It'll determine who you're attracted to, why you're attracted to them, the way that you approach conflict, what you think conflict means in a relationship, how you ask for reassurance. It's basically determining how you show up in a relationship. And what's beautiful is that we know now that your attachment style can change. Although past research and the book Attached by Amir Levine, which used to be like the go-to, and I think it still is the go-to attachment theory book. Unfortunately, in that book, they kind of say, well, your attachment style is your attachment style. If you're anxious, you'll be anxious forever. If you're avoidant, you'll be avoidant forever.
That is not very positive reinforcement vibes.
No. And honestly, so it's what motivated me to write my book. So I wrote a book, which is called Love Magnet. That's what motivated me to write this book, because I wanted people to know that you can always move towards secure attachment. You can always become securely attached. And now the research is backing that up as well, which is great.
That's great. So what was your original attachment style? And I'd love to share mine afterwards so we can deep dive into that for my own personal understanding.
I was so happy that you know your style. I was going to send you a message, but I'm so glad you know. Good.
Oh yeah.
So my attachment style was disorganized attachment or fearful avoidance. So I had both anxious and avoidant strategies happening at the same time, which means I have a lot of really crazy, chaotic dating stories. I think my next book just needs to be about my dating life and my
memoir,
20s.
a dating memoir.
It needs to be, because there's a lot of stuff that's just crazy and hard to believe. Obviously, a lot of pain and heartache too. But yeah, so my previous attachment style was disorganized attachment. And obviously, if I'm super stressed, if a ton of stuff goes wrong, I could fall back in that pattern. But now I know enough, and I know who secure Dr. Morgan is, that I can always realign with that version of myself. But anyways, I want to know your attachment style.
Well, get ready. I'm also disorganized.
Oh my gosh. So fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can write a memoir too.
I can definitely write a memoir, but I think in the past, my attachment style definitely catered to me pushing people away. And whenever things would get too real, I would get scared and I would just fight back. And I think it's definitely a work in progress, but it's interesting how we both kind of had similar childhood experiences and we both had the same attachment style. And I think it goes to show that, it really does depend on your upbringing and, other factors as well. But I think your upbringing has a lot to do with it, because those are our formative years. But I don't know if you can agree or if that's correct. But
absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely, how you were raised, your caregiver's ability to be present and be attuned to your needs, to be a safe place for you. And yeah, losing a parent, all of a sudden, of course, that's really hard on our attachment system, because you don't understand that as a child. And you can often internalize that, oh, there's something about me that I wasn't enough, or there was something wrong with me, even if logically that's not the case, right? Yeah. But you can internalize it as abandonment, even if it was a tragic loss.
For sure.
So,
doesn't it have to do with feeling unsafe with a parent? Disorganized? Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of just learning to be hypervigilant to your environment and learning how to switch strategies. So the anxious strategies and the avoidance strategies, you have to learn how to use both with a disorganized attachment style. So yeah. And then, I wanted to point out, so you mentioned the factors of early childhood experiences. And now there's research also talking about early romantic experiences having a big impact.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that definitely plays a role. So what is the research saying when it comes to that?
Some people can experience very healthy, securely attached childhoods. Yet if they're experiencing, like, let's say their first boyfriend or second boyfriend or girlfriend, they experience this relational trauma, that could also impact their attachment style. Because I'll have clients who come to me and they say, oh my gosh, my childhood was amazing. I don't know why I'm showing up this way. And most of the time I can look at their early romantic experiences and that's where it is.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that, because my dad was incredible, like absolutely amazing and so smart, was one of my favorite people on the planet, but he unfortunately suffered from substance use disorder. So growing up in a household with a parent that was dealing with that was obviously scary for a child. But I think as I got older, I started to understand it more, and I started to obviously have more compassion towards it. I think at first I was just confused, but I noticed in my like early dating that I would kind of go towards people that had similar tendencies. And I think it was like this weird comfortability thing. So it's interesting how like our childhood and like the relationships that we're involved in play a huge factor into, you know, how we date and who we date.
Oh, they play such a huge factor.
Yeah.
And obviously, I have so much compassion for you and growing up in that environment. And I know that when there's substance use, that really can create emotional unavailability. Because if you think about it, if you're suffering with addiction, you are in a relationship with the substance,
Yeah.
and that can impact all your other relationships. So it can make it really hard to have a parent that they're in a relationship with a substance, right? And how that can impact their relationship with you. So I appreciate you sharing that. I know that's very vulnerable.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever shared that before, but I find it to be really interesting when it comes to attachment theory because it starts to make sense when you put these pieces together. So I know that we've talked about disorganized attachment style and how that's kind of a mix between fearful and avoidant. Would you mind explaining the rest of the attachment styles like a little bit more in depth, like maybe some telltale signs of what anxious attachment looks like or what fearful attachment looks like? I think that would really be helpful for the listeners to figure out maybe what they might be. And then if they have like any telltale signs that they resonate with, maybe they can go ahead and take the quiz and see what they are.
Yes. Yes. And it's totally normal that you might have more than one. So I'm so happy to talk about this. With anxious attachment, this is the classic fear of abandonment. And with this attachment style, you're doing a lot of reassurance seeking. So this is that person who might find themselves texting their boyfriend like 15 times a day, and they're really wanting a lot of closeness and proximity. And the thing with anxious attachment is no matter how much reassurance you get, you don't really feel like you're internalizing it. So you always need more reassurance. And then with this attachment style, you're more likely to experience codependence and devaluing yourself and overvaluing your partner. So you might put people on a pedestal. That would be one way to know if you're experiencing anxious attachment. And then with avoidant attachment, so this is the opposite. This is where I always think of the girls who say catch flights, not feelings. You're right. Like you're struggling with maintaining intimacy. And for people with avoidant attachment style, there's just this fear of, I'm going to let this person down. Maybe I'm not a good partner. I'm not good at maintaining intimacy. So they're going to do things to distance, a lot of times unconsciously. So even making themselves busy, throwing themselves into their career all the time, going on all kinds of trips with their friends, and they're just kind of unconsciously making themselves pretty unavailable for a romantic relationship.
That's so funny because I feel like I resonated with so many things in both of those.
Yes, and that's
which is
disorganized. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that inner work is really important though, for sure. And realizing your worth. And I think in the past with my disorganized attachment style, I was just always pushing people away. And it's interesting that with avoidant, people are just not even wanting to pursue anything, you know? So it's interesting how the mix of both of those kind of translate into some other signs or some other traits, some other characteristics. But yeah, that's super interesting. So with your clients with avoidant attachment, do you feel as if that stems from a particular experience in life, or what do you commonly see?
What's interesting is with attachment styles, sometimes it can be a very similar root. So there could be relational trauma where you had an unavailable parent figure, but the way that the person responds determines their attachment style. So with avoidant attachment, the person's responding by using hyper independence as a coping skill. Whereas with anxious attachment, they're responding by that fear of abandonment and developing codependence and wanting to be really close with people. So it could be similar roots, but different responses.
Yeah, for sure. That's so interesting. And whenever somebody has a secure attachment style, do you find that it's easy for them to be in relationships, or do you find that they also too struggle in relationships, or how does that play a role?
I always want to make sure people know that secure is not perfect.
Yeah.
It is not perfect. So even when you develop secure attachment and you co-create a securely attached relationship with someone, you're still going to run into conflict. There's still going to be things that are difficult. The difference is with secure attachment, you can more quickly repair and get back to that secure place. Whereas with the insecure styles, it's more likely to go on and the conflict's not getting resolved quickly, and it can cause a lot of emotional pain and chaos.
Yeah. That's so interesting, because I always viewed it as, okay, if you have secure attachment style, you're A plus, but I think everybody kind of has their trials and tribulations with relationships. And it's just about finding somebody that is also healed, that can be a equal partner. So I love that. And I love that you're encouraging people to go more towards healing and understanding and educating themselves. I think that's awesome.
Yes. And even people who are working on themselves, they're still on their healing journey. Maybe they're not fully securely attached. If you partner up with someone who also wants to heal as an individual and also wants to create a healthy relationship, there can be so much healing that takes place within the relationship. So I think this idea that the most important thing is that commitment to healing, and that you're willing to work on yourself as an individual and work on the relationship.
How do you think you can really start to heal from a fearful, avoidant attachment style, like the mix of both? And it kind of sounds overwhelming, right? When you're like, oh, you have pretty much every bad attachment style. How do you move forward with that? And how do you change your ways and, your path to relationships?
Such a good question. It starts with awareness. So even listening to a podcast like this and taking an attachment style quiz, which I do have one I'll give to you for people so they can find out.
Put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it really starts with awareness. And then this is the step that I think some coaching experts miss, that is really powerful from my clinical background. I basically combine the two. But the step that is so necessary is processing your past. And really, I have this exercise I do with my clients that's called the relationship inventory. And we take a deep dive into your relationship history and the things you experienced. And we're able to look at it with this, 360-degree view where we can see the patterns. And by doing that, that allows you to have so much acceptance and self-compassion. And then we can get to a place where we can fully release the past and let go of the relational trauma. And that is absolutely necessary. This is why I like manifesting. If you're just going to try to manifest your best self, I love manifesting. And let's also do the work to release our past trauma. Let's do them both.
For sure. I actually did subconscious reprogramming last year with my friend. I guess it's similar to hypnotherapy, but it was the most transformative experience of my life. And I think that it healed my vision and my view towards who I would want my potential partner to be. And just honestly, all of this random trauma from high school and childhood. And I think it's just this really refreshing feeling. And I think it sounds scary for a lot of people, but once you make it to obviously it's always going to be a part of you. Like you're going to have this scar that maybe one day you can look down at and smile at. But I think whenever you get to that smiling, it is just such a powerful time in your life. And you just feel like you can conquer anything at that point. It's like the world is your oyster.
You start to realize that, okay, in order to not let my past run my life, I have to be willing to look at it, and I have to be willing to get to a place of acceptance and compassion for myself so that I can fully release it. Yeah. And then I go, oh, I can choose differently. So someone with disorganized attachment, they really need to know my past relationships do not determine my present or future relationships. I can show up differently. I can choose differently. That's the deep work that we have to start with. And then obviously there's all these other things like emotional regulation, self-soothing, securely attached, direct communication, relationship pacing. There's all these other skills, but none of it matters unless you do this deeper work and you release your past trauma.
I love how you have so many resources. I think it's great that you've written a book and you're just helping people understand that there is a brighter path ahead. It's not this one and done thing of, oh, you're this attachment style. Sorry. You're stuck there forever. I think it's great that you're giving people a different mindset towards it. And I also love how you have your own practice and you're implementing like these new strategies into it that maybe weren't in like the normal clinical aspect. But yeah, and I think in your own quiz, I think it's awesome that you have all of these resources readily available for people. So I'm excited to put those in the show notes. But I saw that you had a Love is Blind segment on your socials, which I thought was so unique and creative for somebody who's an attachment theory coach to just comment on and give feedback about, because I feel like that show is like such an enigma to people. So having an expert opinion on it was like super cool to watch, but that looked like it was really fun for you to make.
Oh yeah. I love talking about Love is Blind, and this season 6 was an amazing example of all the attachment styles. We had all of them play out, and we had the one secure couple who was the only couple that ended up getting married. So is it Amy and
crazy.
Johnny? Mm-hmm.
Wow. So they were both secure.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't watch the show. I watched your videos and I watched all the drama unfold on social media. So I just remember seeing the girl who like stood up for herself, and I'm forgetting her name at the moment, but she stood up for herself saying that he was going to choke once he got out of there.
Oh, right. Absolutely. Yes.
That was like a huge thing. And then the girl who said that she looked like Megan Fox. Those are like the two things that I saw on social media.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, there was so much going on there, and it was fascinating to watch how people would cope. And obviously that kind of dating scenario is not your average scenario. So I think just even maybe they were more securely attached in their normal dating lives, but being in that kind of environment, it really brought out their attachment wounds. Yeah. And we watched it, and I did a whole podcast series on it. I think I have 3 episodes, and they're each like an hour, and I just went way in depth. So if you want to know, it's on my podcast.
Oh my gosh, I need to go do a deep dive. But I was telling you that I lived in DC for 4 years, and they, I think, are filming there right now, but they were having such a hard time getting people to go on that show because everybody there is really career driven. I think they were really worried that if they went on the show and things didn't work out, that they wouldn't get their jobs back, and maybe their boss would look at them a little differently. So they were really struggling to find people, but I got reached out to one of the scouts asking to go on. But I don't know if I could do it. And I know that might sound like a little vain, but I don't know. I feel like physical touch and like seeing like chemistry in real life is really important, but I think it's great what the show is doing, and the fact that they're able to connect over conversation is really cool. But If you weren't in a partnership, do you think that you could go on the show?
Oh, here's my dream. I will tell you. I would go on as an expert and
Yeah.
I would be consulting with people and I would help them as things were coming up. And then I would help the couples once they went on their trip to Mexico or wherever they go to be in person. I would give them couples therapy.
I see that happening. I really see it happening.
Thank you. I'm glad you believe in me, Veronica.
I believe in you 100%. I think you're going to be the go-to Love is Blind person, the Love is Blind expert. And you know how Nick Viall, he always interviews all of the people on The Bachelor post-show. I think that's going to happen with you too. Everybody's going to come on your show to recap and to give their tea.
So good. So good.
I can totally see you being the go-to person for that. For sure.
Hey, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, it was so lovely having you on. I know this was a quick little episode today, but I would love to have you in person in studio here in New York whenever you're here next, because I feel like we just have so much more to talk about when it comes to relationships and attachment theory. But I have one last question for you. And I always ask my guests this because everybody always has really different answers, and it gives me like a little insight into their personality. So if you were to drink a martini in a bikini, where would you be and what would you be drinking? And it doesn't have to be alcoholic if you don't drink, but if you do, it definitely can be. But in your wildest imagination. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So I love Spain. I actually speak Spanish. I studied abroad in Spain in college. So it would definitely be southern Spain, maybe Malaga, Costa del Sol, somewhere there. And I am in a current sobriety phase in my life, about a year and a half.
I'm drinking water today in a martini glass.
I love it. I love it. I'm really into Katy Perry's brand, Dessoir. And she has this one that's like I think it's called Golden Hour.
Oh,
and
I haven't heard of it.
It's like adaptogens and mushrooms, and just you feel kind of relaxed and happy. And I'm like, this is better than alcohol. So that would be my drink.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I've been really into those adaptogen drinks lately. Like I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but Gia drink. It's like those little canned ones. And I think they have like a lime salt flavor, and it really tastes like a cocktail, but better. So I might be getting on that train with you. Yeah. But no, that sounds incredible. I need all of your recommendations for southern Spain, because I went to Spain for the first time in August and did like the typical Madrid, Barcelona, but I need to go to some more areas because it was absolutely beautiful. And that's super cool that you speak Spanish too. I wish that I was fluent in Spanish.
There's always time to learn. Now's the time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Morgan. It was such a pleasure talking to you. And I love that you're in your home studio, and it's absolutely beautiful. I wish I was just there with you.
I know.
In Montana with your land. I feel like you manifested for sure.
Come anytime.
Manifested.
Yes. I love it. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Absolutely. Feel free to like share any resources. I'm going to put your podcast, your quiz, and your book in the show notes, but feel free to let us know how people can be friends, hang out, see all the amazing things that you're doing on socials, or if there's anything else exciting that's coming up, feel free to let us know.
Absolutely. Honestly, the best way to connect with me is the podcast, which is called Let's Get Vulnerable. It's available anywhere podcasts are aired. And Instagram is where I hang out the most. So it's just at Dr. Morgan Coaching on Instagram. And I answer DMs if you have questions. I'd love to connect with you on there. So those are the two best places. Yeah.
Yay. Well, it was so much fun talking to you. And I can't wait to just do even more of a deep dive on your socials and figure out more about my attachment theory and my attachment style, and, just
awesome.
See what happens.
I love it.
But I'm excited for other people to listen to and see how they can take the quiz and apply anything to their life concerning attachment theory, potentially work with you, all that good stuff. But
I love it.
Again, thank you so much. And if you like this episode, please feel free to like, rate, and subscribe. It's the best way to help the podcast, and I will love you forever. But cheers.